Thank you for listening to this sermon from Valley Life Church. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to our website at valleylife.church, or better yet, come be our guest on a Sunday morning.
You ready for the last installment of the Wonderful Things series? We've gone through every verse, almost every verse of Isaiah up to now, chapter 27, and we've broken them into little sections. This section has been Wonderful Things. The 7 wonderful things that we are going to see or have seen have been strong city, open road, kingdom come, dew of light. That was the last 2 weeks. Today we see 3 more wonderful things, and they are a slain dragon, a pleasant vineyard garden, and a feast of trumpets. That's what you're going to see in this text. But I'm going to show you something today, and I don't want to be mistaken. What I'm going to show you is not a hidden message in the Bible. I don't believe that there are hidden messages in the Bible. It's all there. Now, it's all about Jesus, and if you're looking for Jesus anywhere in the Bible, that's what you're going to find, and I want to show that to you. In fact, Isaiah 24, 25, 26, 27, the part that we called Wonderful Things, I want you to see that it is mirroring the Genesis story, Genesis 1, 2, 3. Like I said, it's not a hidden message. If it's hiding, then it's hiding right there in plain sight for anyone to see. That Isaiah 24 is just this Genesis story. You can see it like this. If you may not have picked it up, it's my job to show you things like this. Back in 24, the first week of Wonderful Things, I believe Pastor Daniel preached that one. And there was a verse in there. Verse 1 said this: "Behold, the Lord will empty the earth and make it desolate." And verse 3 of that chapter says, "The earth shall be utterly empty, utterly plundered." That's very similar to what Genesis said in the second verse of chapter 1, where it says, "The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep." Those really match up well together. And then in chapter 25 of Isaiah, where it talked about the city of man versus the city of God, it said the city of man was cast down to the dust in verse 12 of 25. It says, "And high fortifications of his walls he will bring down, lay low, and cast to the ground, to the dust." And if you're thinking about it, it sounds a lot like Genesis chapter 2, where it says God formed man from the dust of the ground. The Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And then in chapter 2 of Genesis, in the Genesis story, where did the world come from? Where does mankind come from? It said in 2:15 that the Lord God took the man that he had just formed from the dust and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to keep it. Now that tells us that, just side note, this one's for free, okay, is that work is not a result of sin. Work is a good thing. In the new heavens and the new earth, we will work. Before there was sin, work is good. And the good news is God gives us 6 days that we get to do our work, and one is the Sabbath. But this is, he put him in the garden to work it and to keep it. And in the next chapter of Genesis, chapter 3, it says he drove out the man. So first he puts him in the garden, and then some stuff happens we'll talk about today. And next thing you know, he's driving him out. "I want you in this garden. Now get out of my garden." He drove the man out. And at the east of the Garden of Eden, he placed the cherubim, which is angels, and make sure you get this part, a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. Now, how is that mirrored in Isaiah? Well, in Isaiah 26, we did the last 2 weeks for Isaiah 26. We talked about a strong city, an open road. We talked about kingdom come and the dew of light, which is a metaphor for the resurrection. So how does Isaiah plan on taking us from the formless, empty void, the dust of the ground? And then next thing you know, he's telling us a story about the Jewish people who, for context, had been exiled to Babylon because of their sin and were there for generations. And now he's telling us the story of them coming all the way back. In a crazy miracle of history, they came back from Babylon, and here they come singing this song. The 4 songs of the open road, the kingdom come, the dew of light, the strong city, back into Jerusalem. How in the world did that happen? I think to see it most clearly, we would do well before diving into Isaiah 27, which is what I'm supposed to do today. I want to take you to Genesis chapter 3 and see the story of what made Adam and Eve get driven from the garden. And it's this. Genesis 3, verse 1. Now the serpent, just side note, there's going to be a serpent in Isaiah 27 also. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, did God actually say, you shall not eat of any tree in the garden? Now, you may not know this story, but did God actually say that? And Eve is fixing to tell what she knows. She said, the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Again, side note, when God made his garden and put man in the garden, it was a garden of yes. All the yeses and one single no. All the yeses of all the trees and all the fruit and one single no. And the serpent says, did God actually say you can't eat? And Eve said, we can totally eat. We can't eat from the tree in the middle of the garden. And the serpent said, you will not surely die. It's a straight up lie. First was a question, the second was a straight up lie. And I think it's appropriate to take time here for just a minute and say, where does this come from? If this is a story, which it is a story, it's a true story, but it's in narrative form. So what's driving Satan? What's driving this serpent, this snake, this dragon? Why is he saying, why is he doing the things that he's doing? And let's hear it from the words of Jesus Christ, who knows better than anyone what's moving Satan to do what he does. And this is from John chapter 8. And Jesus is telling some people, you think that you're serving God? Well, you're not. You're serving the devil. And he says it like this. You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. So now we get to hear about Satan's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, and he does not stand in the truth because there's no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. I put together this little, it's on the screen, so you can write down if you need to write down. What's moving Satan forward? It's this. Satan's motivation is evil, and there's nothing behind it. It's bare, naked evil. He has a problem with God. He doesn't really have a problem with you and me. I mean, he does, but I didn't do anything to Satan. Have you ever wondered what I do to that guy? Why is he trying to steal, kill, and destroy my life? He has a problem with God. His motivation is evil, and he wants to murder you because he cannot murder God. His goal is to get back at God. And Jesus said here, he's a murderer from the beginning. There's nothing before that. He's a murderer from the beginning. That's his goal. So his motivation is evil. His goal is murder. The means to murder is sin, because sin equals death. When we sin, we die. Because we sin, we die. That's what he wants us to do, is to sin. And how does he get us to sin? The tool that he gets us to sin with is lies. And I've told you before, there are two basic lies that Satan uses. He only has two tools, and he works them over and over and over. You may remember what they are: temptation and accusation. He only has to use one of them on Eve. He tempts her. But you felt it, and I have too. He tempts us till we sin, and then he accuses us. How could you sin? How dare you sin? And you want to say, you're the one that tempted me to sin. But he's a liar, the father of lies. His way to do it is to get you to sin. That equals death. He's a murderer, and he's evil, and there's nothing behind it. That's what he uses on Eve. And the lie continues in verse 5. For God knows when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman, here we go, saw the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit, and she ate. She also gave some to her husband, who apparently was right there with her, and he ate. And the eyes of both of them were open, and they knew they were naked. Now we find out, oh, they're just naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made for themselves loincloths. So, class, don't answer out loud, but imagine if you would. When did Adam and Eve break the command? When they took and ate. And she gave some to Adam. He took and ate as well. That's when they broke the command. But when was God pushed off the center seat of their hearts? That's when they were believing lies. Before they ever broke a command, there was something else going on. And they started believing and listening to Satan's lies. Specifically, what was the lie? How did the lie function in Eve's heart? Well, it's very clear in verse 6. Here's what happened in her heart. She saw the tree was good for food, that it was a delight to her eyes. That's two things. And thirdly, that it was desired to make one wise. After that, she ate. So she saw it was good for food, and I wonder if you can relate when she says, this is for my body. A woman concerned for her body, a woman saying, this is my body, so it's my choice. I'm doing what I want to do. It's my autonomy here because it's for my body. Can you relate to her saying, well, it's a delight to the eyes, and it looks so good. It was beautiful, apparently. Beautiful enough that she was tempted. It was a delight to her eyes. She saw beauty. She desired beauty. She wanted beauty. And it says, and it was desirous to make her wise, which is to say, I want to be the one who knows what it's like to have it. It looks good. It's for my body. And I want to be the one who knows, who's wise enough to know that experience. I want that experience, and I want to be known as the one who has that experience. That's Eve. So what pushed God off the center seat of Adam's heart? Well, his is different. He simply wants to please someone else. He wants to please in this case, it's his wife. You can call it peer pressure. That's what we tell teenagers. And then you become an adult and realize, oh, that's for everybody. Peer pressure is on all of us. He just wants to make Eve happy, I guess. Some people say if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And maybe that's what's going on in Adam's life. But once they eat, what do they feel? It's pretty clear to me that they feel fear, anxiety, and shame. Their eyes are open and they realize, we are butt naked in this garden. We got to fix this. And they sew fig leaves together, which doesn't work. What do they feel? Well, they feel the same thing that the kids are going to feel on the first day of school. I think school starts this week and last week, and you've had the dream that I've had the same dream, that you've gone to school, it's the first day of school, and you forgot to put your pants on, and the teacher calls on you to please go to the chalkboard, Brian, and work out, and you're like, I'm naked, and I'm ashamed. I feel fear, anxiety, and shame. It's this universal thing. We all know it. And if you're a preacher, you feel that, like my dream is always to get up to preach, and I forgot to get dressed. Fear, anxiety, and shame. And it compounds dramatically in the next verse. And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord among the trees of the garden. They keep trying to cover up a very, very common thing. In my dream, I stay behind the pulpit hoping no one realizes I haven't prepared a sermon and I forgot to get dressed. I'm hiding behind these leaves. I'm trying to cover up fear, anxiety, and shame. Verse 9, and the Lord God called to the man and said, where are you? He said, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself, fear, anxiety, and shame. And he said, who told you you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree which I commanded you not to eat? Now, the answer to that question is yes, and that is not what Adam says. He says, the woman whom you gave to me gave me the fruit of the tree, and I ate. He blames. He blames God. Maybe this was on you a little bit, Lord. Can you bear some of this blame? And when we blame, I'm telling you, we're short-circuiting the process that's supposed to happen. Blame short-circuits confession. Blame short-circuits repentance. And we say over and over, it's literally written on the wall in the lobby, beauty, brokenness, truth, compassion, community. It was a beautiful garden. You can eat anything you want except that one. A garden of yes. And they broke it. My friend Jason Vance always says they dropped the world and broke it. And God says, did you do this? And the answer is yes. Tell the truth so that then there can be compassion and a reunification, a community. And he says, no, the woman who you gave to be with me, she gave it to me, and I ate it. If you can't remember beauty, brokenness, truth, compassion, community, would it help if we say it like this? God made it. We broke it. Just say it. I get it. Let's fix it. And he can't do it. A real confession would have been, look, I wanted to please Eve. She had already descended into this thing, and I didn't want her to be by herself. Or maybe it was, I was scared of what she would say if I didn't do it. If you were being honest, maybe he could say, I don't know how it happened, Father, but I wanted her approval more than I wanted yours. Tell the truth. And he doesn't do it. So God turns his attention to Eve. It says, the Lord God said to the woman, what is this you've done? The woman said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate. And blame short circuits confession and repentance. Beauty, brokenness, just tell the truth so that there can be compassion, so that there can be community. A real confession by Eve might have sounded like, I thought it was right for my body. I'm very concerned about my body, and I thought it would help. A real confession might have been, it looked so good. I'm the kind of person that desires beauty. I love it. A real confession might have said, I just wanted to know what it would be like. It was desirous to make one wise. I knew that I didn't know that experience. I wanted that experience. I wanted to be known as someone who has had that experience. But she doesn't say any of that. So God, verse 14, said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all the livestock, above all the beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity, so it's a war. I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head. You shall bruise his heel. So I'll ask you this question. We know that it was beautiful. We know it was broken. Did Satan, the serpent, receive truth, compassion, and community in that verse? No. He got truth. He got two truths, in fact. Number one, you will eat dust on your belly all the days of your life. That's not compassionate. That's not compassion. The next thing, you will be bruised in the head, which is death. Some guys like to say that Jesus crushed the head of Satan. You'll be bruised in the head, crushed in the head, and that is not community. That's the opposite of community. To the woman, verse 16. He said, I will surely multiply your pain and childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. Did she get truth, compassion, and community in that verse? And the answer is no. She got truth. She got two truths. Number one, childbirth is painful. Can I get an amen? Some say amen. About 50% of us probably. That's not compassionate. That's not. It's truthful, and it's not compassion. And the next truth is you're going to have relational difficulty forever, men and women who are married together. Your desire will be contrary. You'll be kind of for him, but you're going to want to rule over him, and he's going to rule over you. It's going to be not community. That's the opposite of community. And to the man, to Adam, verse 17, he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken. For you are dust, and to dust you will return. Did he get truth, compassion, community? No. He got two truths, two sad truths. Cursed is your work from now on. Instead of a garden of yes where you just go get food, you're going to work for it from now on. And the earth will rebel against you with thorns and thistles. That is not compassion. And secondly, you were made out of dust, and you will die and be buried in the dust. And that is not community. It's the opposite of community. You are exiled from the land of the living to the land of the dead. Everyone else is going to be alive, and you're going to be dead. And that was passed on to all of us, and we all know that's going to happen to us. Verse 20, and the man called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living, and the Lord God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skin and clothed them. Now do you see compassion? Now finally we get to see compassion. That their main thing that's going on in their hearts is fear, anxiety, and shame. All the time that the Lord is talking to each of them, they're probably trying to cover up. I can't believe we're naked in front of the Lord, and these fig leaves are not doing the trick. Tried to hide in the bushes, and he called me out, and God covers them with real clothes, clothes that he himself made for them. And I've told you over and over, love is sacrifice. That's all it is. Love is sacrifice. And he loves them because their clothes are made by God, not from leaves, but with skins from animals that God had made, who did not do anything wrong, but had to be killed so that Adam and Eve would be covered. There was bloodshed on that day so that they could be covered, and that's compassion. And this creates the Genesis pattern that we see over and over again, all through Genesis, all through Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, all through your Bible, straight up through the New Testament. Beauty, brokenness, truth, compassion. Something's gonna die. Real love. Love is sacrifice. And it creates this system in the tabernacle and in the temple of the Jewish people. They would bring their sins in, and something literally has to die. It would be an animal. I mean, going to church meant knives. Going to church meant the bleeding of an animal, and his last breath as a knife is plunged in his neck. That was church. So there could be beauty, brokenness, truth, compassion, that there may be community. But where is the community in the Genesis story? Because if you remember, the next thing that happens is they're driven out of the garden. Well, you can't stay here, and now you're out. And we all know that we're out, and we want to get back in. And in would be, we call it heaven, being with him again, the way we were supposed to be, back in the garden. It's a metaphor for where we're supposed to be. And it doesn't happen in Genesis. They're driven out of the garden, they can't get back in, and a sword keeps them away. And that takes us to to Isaiah 27, what I'm supposed to be doing today. You can see in verse 1, in that day, the Lord, with his hard and great, strong sword, will punish the Leviathan. The Leviathan is this Old Testament, or this old Canaanite myth. It's just a word like we would say Zeus. And they would talk about the Leviathan. They had a name for it. It's named Rahab, but it's this serpent that brings chaos everywhere it goes. And the Lord with his hard and great and strong sword will punish that serpent. The fleeing serpent, the idea of him flying through the air. A serpent of the air, we call those dragons. The Leviathan, the twisting serpent, we imagine him coiled up on the ground. He's in the air and he's coiled up on the ground. And he will slay the dragon that is in the sea. It's a threefold dragon, the air, the land, and the sea. It's chaos everywhere he goes. Murder is in his heart and his tools are lies. And in this garden, in verse 2, we find it's a thorn-free garden. It says, in that day, a pleasant vineyard, sing of it. It's a vineyard garden. Sing of it. I, the Lord, am its keeper. Every moment I water it, lest anyone punish it. I keep it night and day. If you're wondering, where is the Garden of Eden? Well, metaphorically, God says, oh, I got it. Don't worry. I'm taking care of the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve were driven out just in the same way that the nation of Judah and the people of Jerusalem were driven out of that land, out to Babylon, which is the context of this story. Because they sinned, the discipline of the Lord is painful, not pleasant. They were out, driven into Babylon for generations. And now they get to come home and return back into the vineyard garden. And God says, don't worry, I'm watching over the garden lest anyone punish it. I keep it night and day. He says, I have no wrath. Would that I had thorns and briars to battle. I would march against them. I'd burn them up forever. I'd burn them up together. When he says, would that I have, it'd be similar to someone saying, oh, I wish I had some thorns to battle. Let the thorns try to get into my garden. I will tear them up. I will go to battle with them and burn them up. Or, verse 5, or let them lay hold of my protection. Let them make peace with me. Let them make peace with me. He's inviting these hypothetical thorns and briars and weeds who he says, oh, I'd go to battle if they tried to get in my garden. Unless they want to come on in and receive my protection, they're welcome to do it. The vineyard membership, the garden membership is open to everyone. Number 3, it's a global garden. You'll see in verse 6. It says, in days to come, Jacob shall take root. It's all these garden vineyard metaphors. Jacob, the people of Jacob, will take root in the garden. Israel shall blossom and put forth shoots and fill the whole world with fruit. The purpose of the garden isn't so just Jewish people can enjoy what they were supposed to have in the Garden of Eden, and now they get it. The purpose was for it to expand over the entire earth. When God chose Abraham and said, I'm going to make the Jewish people through you. I pick you. You're going to have a big family, and you're going to have this land. The idea wasn't so then the Jews could be blessed. The idea was that then the Jewish people would be a blessing to everyone else. It says that in Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. My last name is Bowman. That means I probably go back to England, best I can figure. I don't go back to Jerusalem. But God's plan is that the Bowman family get a brand new name. We get to be brought into the city, put my feet up under God's table, and I don't have to live under my old name, cursed. I get a brand new name in this family. In fact, in Habakkuk, an obscure kind of text, in Habakkuk 2:14, it says, For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Go check the Pacific Ocean and see if there's any water in there. Yeah, it's all water. That's the way it's going to be. Number 4, it's a guarded garden. I don't know if that was a good idea or not, but that's what I called it. A guarded garden, he says, verse 7. And it's a tough question. It's tough to read out loud, and it's tough to answer. Here it goes. Has he struck them as he struck those who struck them? Well, I don't even know what you said. I can't answer. Has he struck them as he struck those who struck them? Or have they been slain as their slayers were slain? And the answer to that question is no. No. God struck Satan in a completely different way than he struck Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, yes, their heels were bruised. The heel of mankind was bruised, but Satan got struck in the head. The answer is no. That sea dragon, the old serpent Satan, yes, he bruised the heel, but God will strike Satan in the head. Yes, Judah is exiled to Babylon. That's painful, not pleasant, like the discipline of a father. But what God is going to do to Satan is to crush him in the head, and he's going to bring his people home. It yields the fruit of peace, which is what verse 8 says. It goes, measure, by exile you contended with them. He removed them with his fierce breath in the day of the east wind. Therefore, by this, that exile, by this, the guilt of Jacob will be atoned for. And by this, the full fruit of the removal of his sin. The removal of his sin is described like this. When he makes all the stones of the altars like chalk stones, like you take a stick of chalk and just crush it down. All the ways that the people of Judah sinned against God at those fake altars, worshiping in sinful ways, he said, I'm going to stop all that. I'll crush it like chalk. Crushed to pieces. No Asherim or incense altars will remain standing. It's the same thing as when you or your friends, anybody, imagine, what do you think heaven is like? Ain't nobody drunk on a corner in heaven. Ain't nobody cheating on their wife in heaven or worshiping false idols in heaven. It's perfect there. And he's saying, yeah, I'm going to end everything. I'm going to end everything bad and have everything good. There'll be no lying in heaven on earth. When heaven on earth is here, no lying. When heaven on earth is here, no crying. When heaven on earth is here, there'll be no sin and no idols. It's a guarded garden. And number 5, it's a garden of choice. You have a garden choice. You don't have to go to the garden. He says, I'm going to make it. It's going to be great. I'm the one watching over it. Oh, I wish someone would try to bring sin into my garden. I'll fight against that. But anybody who wants to come in is welcome to come in. And you don't have to if you don't want to. That's what he says. So let me describe if you don't want to come in. What's outside of the garden? Well, it's this destroyed city. He says that this, for the fortified city is solitary, a habitation deserted and forsaken, like the wilderness. There the calf grazes. There it lies down and strips branches. That's what it's like outside of God's kingdom. Its boughs are dry. They're broken. Women come and make a fire of them. It's just good for firewood. For this is a people without discernment. Therefore, he who made them will not have compassion on them. He who formed them will show them no favor. You don't have to come into the garden if you don't want to come into the garden. But you can. My good news today is, no matter who you are or what brought you to Valley Life, or if this is the 100th time you've heard something like this, or the first, you are welcome to the garden. You are welcome back into the Garden of Eden. You are welcome back into community because he has shown us compassion. You can see it in verse 12. In that day, from the river Euphrates to the brook of Egypt, so like all over their known world, the Lord will thresh out the grain and you will be gleaned one by one. So this picture is like the garden. Maybe it's growing grapes. It's a vineyard. And he says, I will pick one grape, and that's you. He picked me. Just me. Just a sinful kid growing up in Oklahoma, and he picked me. Like one olive off of an olive tree, or even here, one grain out of a stalk of wheat. He picks us one by one. He picked me. He picked Josh. He picked you individually. You will be gleaned one by one, O people of Israel. And in that day, a great trumpet will be blown. So just so you know, he started off with a great sword, this big old sword. Here he says, this is a big old trumpet. This great trumpet is going to be blown. And those who are lost in the land of Assyria and those who are driven out to the land of Egypt will come. They're going to come back and worship the Lord on the holy mountain at Jerusalem. The context, remember the context, the people of Israel were picked up. They were exiled to Babylon, just like Adam and Eve were pushed out of the garden. And that sword that kept them out, God is going to turn that sword against Satan and slay that coiling snake, the snake of the air, of the sea, and of the land. And he's going to deal with death forever and invite anyone who wants to come back. He said, I'm going to blow this big trumpet. And if you're a Jewish person, when he wrote this, you know what that reference is. They had this huge holiday, a big festival, the Festival of Trumpets. You blow the trumpet and it signifies, here comes the Day of Atonement. Have you heard of the Day of Atonement? The Day of Atonement is amazing. In the tabernacle and in the temple, the sins of the whole nation for the whole year get put on one animal. A sacrificial, the animal didn't do anything wrong, but now we got to say all the sins are on that animal. And here comes the priest with his knife, sticking it in the animal, bleeding out his blood. A sacrificial animal. And that pattern continued over and over and over. The compassion of God for anyone who wants it, invited to come in and worship God, so that one day, on the day that Isaiah 27 is describing, all the people of the world, anyone that wants in, can have their sins atoned for and come in and worship on his holy mountain at Jerusalem. Whether you're lost in the land of Assyria, whether you feel exiled to Egypt in some metaphorical way because of your great sins or your small sins that just keep piling up, you are welcome to come home. You can repent of your sins. Just say the truth about what you've done. Receive the compassion of his only son dying on the cross, the final sacrifice. And if you're if you're scoring at home, that's the last sacrifice. All those animal sacrifices ended historically when Jesus dies on the cross because no more blood needs to be shed. That was the final sacrifice, and we look to him to receive his compassion. And finally, we are reunified. We are in community with God when we come to his holy mountain and we worship. So what do I literally want you to do? Today is easy. If you're already a Christian, you've already become a Christian, started walking with him, maybe you've already been baptized, then today we just celebrate. We'll take the Lord's Supper. We'll remember the juice, reminds us of the blood. We'll remember the bread, reminds us of the body. And we celebrate. That's my only call for you. If you're not a Christian, or if you don't know if you're a Christian, or how would I know if I'm in or if I'm out, or what I need to do next? Maybe I've been baptized before, but I don't know if it took. What do I do? Do this. Sing the songs with us. And at the end of the service, after the host comes up and dismisses everybody, people will go to the back to get their kids. People stand on the patio to chat. But I'm going to be right here. Daniel will be right over there. There'll be others here to pray with you. And I'd love for you just to come down and just talk with us. I would like to talk with you about receiving forgiveness for your sins because Jesus died on the cross, and you are welcome to come back to his garden.
Hi, it's Pastor Brian, and I hope this sermon is helping you become good, glad, and strong in your faith. But remember, there's just nothing like being a part of your own local church. So if you're in the North Phoenix area, you should join us this Sunday. And if you do, make sure you find me and say hello. And if you're not in North Phoenix, our team would consider it a real honor to help get you connected to a church near you. Just email us at hello@valleylife.church, and we'll do our very best to help you out. Now, you can always find more podcasts, community groups, service opportunities, and even a giving link on our app and on our website. Press on.